You're committed, you love each other, and it's been so hard for so long. You have tried everything that you can think of to change things, but it's still not sticking. And this is when the hopelessness creeps in. You just want to feel rock solid in your relationship. You want to feel loved, connected, understood, seen. You want to feel safe, like you can trust. You want to get back to having sex. And you're wondering, where did we go off track? Welcome to Self-Led Love with me, your host, Bahia Miller. Together, using the powerful framework of internal family systems, we will take on the spiritual and oh-so-human curriculum of becoming radically responsible for our parts and how they show up and grow up in intimate partnership. I'm so glad you're here. Let's dive in. Today, we're going to discuss 3 fundamental strategies to shifting the way that we approach saving our relationship. Because sometimes things have gone off track because there's a big rupture, a big incident, breach of trust. And sometimes it's been death of 1,000 paper cuts. And maybe you're in a position where you're thinking, should I stay or should I go? Are we compatible? Does this thing have legs for the long haul? But until you've done these 3 steps, it's really hard to be able to know that with clarity. And so by the end of this episode today, it is my promise to you that you will have a clear framework for how to approach this big conversation about if your relationship is actually viable or not, and you will actually get more than you bargained for. And if you want to know what exactly I mean by that, you'll just have to listen and see. And so the first phase in saving your relationship is actually to detach from a particular outcome, to let go, to surrender, because not all relationships are actually meant to be saved. Now, I don't know, maybe yours is, maybe it's not. I have no idea. But if you keep going after this first step, you will find out. And there is tremendous power in not being attached to a particular outcome. It allows us to see things more clearly, and it actually restores our choice to some degree. But in order to get back to that choice, we need to look at the parts of us that maybe don't think they have a choice. And so there's a whole spectrum of how parts can kind of approach a difficult relationship, from one end being the part that's already packing their bags and they think they need to get out and they think that there's something wrong here, to those kind of flight parts, to parts that feel really scared to leave, that are scared of loss, of heartbreak, of being alone, of starting over. On either end of the spectrum, both of those sets of parts are actually causing us to be stuck in either not paying attention to learning the lessons that are here in the parts that want to go, and the parts that are scared to let go. There's not really an ability to see things clearly. Now, you may have very good reasons for wanting to stay in this relationship and keep the relationship. You might have kids together. You might have a social network together, family, financial, right? There are real reasons. And there might be a lot of goodness in your relationship that wants to keep you there. And that's all something to keep in consideration about. I'm not saying that this letting go means you're letting go of the relationship, but you are letting go of thinking that you know what's best. It's having an open mind. It's no longer condemning the relationship or condemning the partner or condemning yourself for being the problem, and really shifting into this stage of curiosity about, what is this thing here to teach us? What is this here to teach me? And what is going to happen if we move into our highest alignment with ourself, which is also another way for saying our authenticity. And Gabor Mate, in a lot of his writings, talks about how there's this friction between our attachment and our authenticity. And that when we're children, right, and our attachment to our caregivers is threatened by us being truthful in our expression of our feelings or who we are, that we will always choose attachment over our authenticity because we needed to for our survival needs, right? And so we learned, many of us, how to shut down certain aspects of ourselves to stay in relationship. And if you've gotten to the point where you're in enough pain in your relationship that you're ready to do things differently, there's often an upgrade that needs to happen in our understanding that it's safe to be authentic in our relationship for things to upgrade to a more powerful place. And this takes us right into phase number 2, which is turning towards your pain, AKA listening to your parts, really getting curious, like what went wrong here, right? Because maybe there was a massive rupture. Maybe this is the death of 1,000 paper cuts, but what have I done or not done that has contributed to the issues that we are having, right? Where have I fallen short in my communication or come in too strong in my communication? Where do I not have the educational gaps in knowing how to process and make sense of my own triggers and my own trauma, right? How have I crossed my own boundaries and my own needs to provide for you or to be who I think you want me to be, which has caused resentment, right? Really alchemizing our resentment into these profound lessons of where I've abandoned myself to stay in relationship to you, or where I just haven't been taught and shown a healthy version of what secure attachment can look like, right? Gaps in my understanding of what healthy relationship is. And so doing our own inner work is really an invitation to get super honest with ourselves. And denial can be a very strong part and a very important part. There are parts that we just weren't ready to look at some of these things until we could move into that state of letting go of a certain outcome, right? Until we could be objective enough. Maybe we weren't able to see certain parts of ourselves clearly and take responsibility for them. And when I say take responsibility, there is caring for our own inner parts, our pain, and then there's also the expression of that in the behavior. And I'm inviting us all to really take responsibility for both of those things, for the thing that's happening underneath that's driving the behavior and the behavior itself. And whether that behavior is big and damaging or it looks like shutdown, withdrawal, that we need to come into relationship and understanding and compassion with those parts of us before we can actually let them know that we are here to help them mature and grow up and do things differently, and that it's safe to do things differently. And this is actually where it takes us to the next phase, which is anchoring in the lessons that we learn about ourselves into our actual behavior, right? This is where the inner work becomes relational, where we take it outside of ourselves and start walking our talk. And in that journey of doing the inner work, we really have to understand that our relationship is a mirror for us that is showing us the unhealed places that still live within ourselves. And these are places that sometimes go back to our family of origin, that have been patterns for a long time, that are illuminating the places where we don't feel love towards ourselves, right? And as we get stronger in that inner realm, we turn our heart on more towards ourselves, towards our own experience, then the things our partner is doing will start to phase us less. And we will be able to communicate about the impact of them and what's going on in a much clearer way. And this is where we shift into the third phase of this, which is how we show up differently. This is where we walk our talk. We become a new version of ourselves on purpose. We are upgrading our parts, right? We've done this sacred U-turn to be with our inner counsel, to really understand their pain and how far back it goes and what the invitation is for this next version of ourself in relationship. And so now we need to walk the talk. And I do encourage the folks I work with to share about what they're learning about themselves with their partner so that they can be holding themselves accountable first, but also let the partner know about the changes that are coming. Sometimes it can be hard when those that we have a certain relationship dynamic with, that it changes all of a sudden. But anybody who really cares about you If you're doing something that is honoring of yourself, they'll support it eventually. They'll come around for it. And so we are helping in this phase our managers, right? This is like actually, I think there's some skill building that happens in our manager parts, that they learn some relationship skills. They get to try on new ways of communicating, new ways of speaking up for their needs, new ways of softening and receiving, of seeing our partners more clearly. This is a maturation process that only can happen in relationship. We can't do this all by ourselves in a vacuum. They say trauma happens in relationship. Well, healing happens in relationship too. I can't do it all by myself. And sometimes this looks like setting clear boundaries, not just you can't do that anymore, but when this happens, here's how I'm going to take care of myself, right? So we are shifting the energy so that you can be both self-honoring in your authenticity and in healthy attachment, right? And we need the skill set of healthy communication and a structure for repairing. And this really becomes an invitation for a whole lifestyle shift into what it means to be 100% responsible for how I show up in relationship and upgrading the ways that we do this dance together. And in this third phase, you're also kind of assessing, is my partner down? Are they here? Do they have capacity to come with me to this next place? Are they willing to do it for themselves? And sometimes that's really important that they're also doing this work. And sometimes it is enough for one person to be doing it. And the changes that come from that one person help the other person recalibrate. There's not a right way that this goes. And even with these 3 phases that we're mapping out, they don't need to always happen perfectly in this order. You have to be in complete surrender, and then you have to completely do your inner work, and then you completely embody it and share it with your partner. No, right? It can be kind of a circle, right? A spiral, a cascade where we're deepening in these 3 different areas and ways. And so for me, in my relationship, what I really needed to know from the get was if my partner, if my husband was willing to engage with me in this work, in this process, whenever we needed to. Because it doesn't happen that we're working through all of these deep layers as often as we were in different phases of the relationship. But I needed to know that when it was up, when something was happening, that he could meet me there. And he does in his own way. It doesn't look exactly like the way I move through things and process things, but he has his own way. And it works for him. And it has worked for us. So we're assessing, does the other person have the capacity? Do they have integrity to be responsible for themselves? And do they have the desire to keep working through this with you? And sometimes we can do this by ourselves, and sometimes we really need support. I have needed much support in my relational journey, and I am so grateful for it. It bolstered me. It helped me move through these pieces faster. And I always think of the Einstein quote that is, no problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it, right? Sometimes we need someone to help us learn some skills. Sometimes we need someone to sit with us in our pain. So we've moved through this process, these 3 different phases of coming into right relationship with how we're approaching saving our relationship, coming into this detachment, this surrender and letting go so that we can see things more clearly and give our real curiosity to what's happening here. We have done this sacred U-turn to connect to our pain, our resentment, our fear, the parts that have been working so hard for so long to maintain attachment, even though maybe we have sacrificed certain parts of ourselves. We've gotten honest with ourselves. And then we have found healthy ways to embody that behavior, right? To embody those updated, upgraded, more mature parts so that they can really integrate on a nervous system level, that it is safe for me to be authentic and attached in secure attachment. And this is a process that is circular and spiral, and we go through these phases around and around at different times. And so having a clear structure and process for how to move through these things when they show up is really helpful, because our partners are these mirrors that are showing the unhealed places within ourselves. They are this sacred sandpaper, spiritual sandpaper, that is helping us use the friction, if we choose to use the friction, to keep getting free, to keep understanding, where have I given my power away? Because my hope in saving your relationship is actually that we're saving your relationship to yourself. And then from that place of sovereignty, of wholeness, of connection, of self-leadership, that you are choosing this relationship and not choosing it. I'm not saying that this is like, oh, I'm coming into alignment with myself and then it's my way or the highway. And I'm, we need to be completely aligned. No, relationships are a give and take. It is compromise. It is teamwork. We do things differently. We are different people. We think differently. We feel differently. We process differently. How can we make this work together so that we can amplify our experience, our love, our joy, and share this together? Because connection is just part of the deal. It's part of what we came here for. So thank you for sitting with me and taking this all in today. There's an invitation here, right, to become responsible, to love yourself deeply. And from those depths, choose yourself as you show up in relationship and choose your partner if you decide to choose them still, right? Because I really believe that if we take this process on as a lifestyle, as a way that we understand and move through what is coming up in the relational field, that the relationships either will get deeper and more powerful, or they'll complete, because it will become clear that this isn't going to work. And so there's actually nothing for us to figure out in our mind, but really just our capacity to slow down in this process and actually place our focus where it will actually make a difference. And if you would like more support in this process, feel free to reach out. You can book a discovery call on my calendar. Also, I have created a guide for you, a relationship responsibility checklist, self-led love checklist. It's down in the show notes, that you can get more clarity about what is your work to do versus what is your partner's work to do in the relationship. And I'm just appreciating you so much for being here today. Thanks for tuning in. Feel free to subscribe to the podcast if you got something out of this. Share with a friend who is having a hard time in their partnership. I'm sending care and encouragement to your courageous heart. Thank you for being here with me today.